Some of the worst advice I ever followed sounded completely reasonable at the time. It came from high-level black belts and champions. But here's the part that nobody tells you. Once you hit your 40s and your 50s, good advice can actually wreck you. It can drain your confidence, push you straight into adrenal fatigue, and make you feel like you're the problem. But the trap is subtle, because it's not bad advice. It's just not good advice for you. And that's what we're talking about today. The 3 most common jiu-jitsu tips that older grapplers keep hearing and why it might be quietly killing your game. Welcome to the Alchemy of Struggle, baby. So there's this illusion of universal advice in jiu-jitsu. Everyone hears the same stuff, but not everyone should follow it. And on the surface, most jiu-jitsu advice sounds like wisdom. Train more often. Study all positions to build a complete game. And push through the pain. And to be fair, these are often great tips for the right person. But here's the catch. Most of it comes from young competitors who train 5 to 7 days a week with a higher recovery capacity and minimal life responsibilities. And the advice feels like it should work. So when it doesn't, you blame yourself. So instead of questioning whether or not the advice fits, you assume you're just not working hard enough. So you just keep trying and just keep flailing. And this is how a lot of older grapplers quietly get crushed. Not by bad coaching or bad technique, but by trying to live up to standards that were never designed for them. The result? Frustration, confusion, because the advice sounded reasonable, and you don't want to be the guy who shows up making excuses. So let's shift the frame before we go any further. Advice is only good if it matches your context, your age, your goals, your fitness level, and your schedule. If you're over 40 with a job, a family, and jiu-jitsu goals that have absolutely nothing to do with competing, the advice that gets repeated so much online might not only be unhelpful, it might be quietly wrecking your entire game. So what is some of this advice? One of my favorites. Study every position to build a complete game. On the surface, this sounds like high-level advice. And in some cases, it actually is. Champions like Gordon Ryan talk about being good everywhere and mastering every position. And that's valid if your goal is to be a world-class competitor. But here's where it burned me personally. I took that advice and ran with it. I started diving deep into every position and studying systems far outside of my core game until I eventually realized that for me personally, it was a fool's errand. Because I'm not Gordon Ryan. I'm a 55-year-old dude who sits at a desk most of the time. And I'm not trying to be a world champion. I just want to get better, stay healthy, and get a little sharper. And that's when it clicked. This wasn't bad advice. It just didn't fit my life. But there is a caveat. If you plan on being a coach one day, you need to have a much broader understanding. You'll need to teach people whose games are much different than your own. And that requires exposure to all positions, even ones that you rarely use. But if you're not planning to be a coach, focus on going deep into your own game. Otherwise, you're just stockpiling knowledge you'll never use and burning energy that you cannot afford to waste. And the next piece of advice that we hear so often, just train more. On the surface, this sounds like the golden ticket. And if you interpret it the right way, it absolutely can be. Especially if you follow Hickson's approach. Slow, smooth, and relaxed training. Or as Faraz Zahabi talks about so much on his channel, high volume of training, of reps, but very low intensity. But that's not what most people hear, and it's not how they apply it. When they hear train more, they think go hard more often. So they add more sessions, but without reducing intensity. And that's where the damage starts. And here's what most people miss. When you stack roles with poor sleep, life stressors, and work pressure, you're not just getting tired. You're frying your nervous system. Your body stops recovering. Your energy crashes. And that's adrenal fatigue. Now I know it's not a medical diagnosis that everyone agrees on, but the symptoms are real. And the worst part is you think it's your fault. You assume you're not training hard enough. You're not disciplined enough. So you push even harder and fall deeper into that hole. But if you're over 40 and pushing past your capacity week after week after week, you're just training your body to crash. What's the next piece of advice? Push through the pain. This is one of the most dangerous pieces of advice for older grapplers. And listen, there's a place for grit. You're not made of glass. Discomfort is part of the path. But the problem is not knowing what kind of pain to push through. Muscle soreness? That's manageable. Emotional hesitation or fear? Yeah, push through that. But a sharp tweak in your knee or a nerve tingling down your entire arm? That's your body screaming, not whispering. And here's what happens when you ignore these signs. That minor tweak becomes 6 months off the mats. And that push through it mentality becomes a pattern of injury, inflammation, and rehab cycles that never seem to end. So for older grapplers, pain is not a badge of honor. It's a big red flashing warning sign. Respecting it doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart enough to do the right thing so that you can keep showing up. So how do we fix this? It's learning to filter better. So you don't need more advice. You just need a sharper lens to run it through. Does this match my body and my recovery capacity? Does it serve my long-term game? Does it help or hurt my momentum? And you have to be absolutely ruthless about context. Before you internalize someone's advice, including advice from me, ask yourself, how old is this person? What are their personal goals? And how often do they train? Are they trying to win the next 80cc? Or just trying to stay sharp in their 40s and their 50s? And you'll quickly realize that they're not necessarily wrong. They're just not talking to you. So what should you do instead? Stay open to advice. Look at Jiu Jitsu advice like you look at everything else, with a skeptical eye. Pay attention to what your body is telling you. And when something seems like it fits, double down on it. But if it doesn't, let it go without ceremony or guilt, even if it came from a world champion black belt. And look, I'm not just saying this into a camera because it sounds cool. I follow this advice. Nowadays, I filter out most of what I hear because I am well in tune with my own body and I have a well-calibrated inner compass. I still show up to class with everyone else. I still do the warm-ups. I drill the technique of the week. And if it fits, I'll even try to apply it during live rolls. But in the back of my mind, there's this matrix of calculations taking place. Constantly evaluating. Where does this fit in my current game? What's the cost of learning this versus what I already know? Does this disrupt or support my rhythm and recovery? And that's what I want you to take away from this. Discernment is a skill in and of itself. The best older grapplers are not just technical. They are extremely selective. They don't just train, they curate. And that kind of wisdom is what keeps them on the mat year after year. And if you haven't seen it already, check out the video on how not to be that guy in Jiu Jitsu. It touches on some of these points, but from a different angle. And if any of this hit home for you, check out some of the free stuff in the description. Or if you want to go deeper, join the channel membership. And as always, I want to thank the subscribers and the commenters for helping me level up this content. But remember, there are others who need this message, and they're probably in your own gym. So let's help them find it. Like, share, and subscribe. Keep up the good fight, and stay safe on those mats. Peace.